Conclusion. As a nation and as individuals, we once, and very recently, relatively speaking, understood what the founders termed self-evident truths. Yes, there was a natural law upon which we pretty much all agreed. There were certain obvious truths that, no matter how divergent other beliefs might be, every American could agree upon. These did not only include the idea of natural rights. It was self-evident that all people were created equal. It was self-evident that all people were born with natural rights, but also things like girls grow up to be women and boys grow up to be men, as well as porn is bad, especially for children, or sexually grooming children is bad. These types of obvious truths laid the foundation of common values and thus constituted the middle ground where all Americans could come together and unite. Over time, the unraveling of society has been hastened as moral relativism pulled the threads of truth and values apart. There no longer appears to be a middle ground, and instead there is a wide and deep chasm between those who adhere to absolute truth and those who deny it. The founders knew that it was impossible to create a value-neutral society. They knew that the form of government they were proposing would work only for a moral people, a people who could self-govern based on personal accountability to the God of nature and nature's law. Self-evident, absolute truths that, when defied, have natural and unavoidable consequences. Thus, every founding document includes deference to both the God of nature and nature's law. As the battle wages to undercut the form of government by turning the obvious into the obscene and transforming the obscene into the new value system, it makes sense that there are elements who wish to destroy the country's fabric, which depends on the principles of self-government, where the individual feels accountable to a higher law and a higher power, and as a result commits themselves to the unenforceable and unwritten laws of morality, honesty, and civility. The enemies of America have been actively and successfully destroying our Judeo-Christian values and culture based on natural law and then replacing them with lies and new definitions and corrupt laws instead of good ones. Although I come from a position that the fabric has already unraveled and the only thing left to do is to live free until they come arrest us, perhaps as long as there are people who adhere to good values and good laws, there is yet a possibility to restore liberty and justice for all. But first, we need to restore moral clarity. As Sharansky noted, quote, "Over the years, I have come to understand a critical difference between the world of fear and the world of freedom. In the former, the primary challenge is finding the inner strength to confront evil. In the latter, the primary challenge is finding the moral clarity to see evil. And I am afraid that without such moral clarity, we cannot see evil, identify it, and then turn away from it. In fact, right now in society, we are calling evil good and we're calling good evil. So to end the conclusion, I'm just going to ask a bunch of questions. Will we ultimately land on the side of freedom or of fear? Do we have the moral clarity to see evil? Do we have the inner strength to confront it? Will we as a people embrace liberty or tyranny? By what standard shall we measure? Will we blindly follow the state or the popular will of the people? Or should we just live as though we are free until they come to arrest us? And then there is the author's note to Christians on page 185. I am the author. This is my note. This missive, though applicable to all Americans, to all people, regardless of their faith tradition, was indeed written by a follower of Christ who is herself in need of grace and mercy, and thankful that the Lord's mercies are new every morning, thankful that even when she fails, her God is faithful. And of course that shapes my worldview. But the reader does not need to share a Christian worldview to understand the need for moral clarity, the struggle between doing what is best and what our immediate desires dictate, nor to understand the political philosophies upon which this tome relies. To be free, we must live as though we are free. And we are free. We were born free. We are inherently free. That is why I want to remind Christians that it is for freedom's sake that Christ has set us free. Christians who claim to be filled with the Holy Spirit can start by living by the Spirit and judging their own actions and attitudes based upon the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And as spiritual things are recognized by the Spirit, this fruit is evident to all. We can recognize the Spirit in others as they live their lives in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Not to mention, against such things, there is no law. And again, may I remind you, the desperation is real. All the division and conflict, all the anger, scrambling, and clawing belies the fact that everyone else is in a struggle for their very identity. But followers of Christ do not find their identity in their sexuality, gender, or gender identity. Followers of Christ do not find their identity in their skin color or ethnicity. Followers of Christ do not find their identity as parents or children or siblings or in their singleness or spouses. Followers of Christ do not find their identity in their jobs, employment status, or financial situation. Followers of Christ do not find their identity in political party, nor are we loyal to or beholden to any politician. We are followers of Christ, and we have but one identity, and we don't have to fight anyone for it. The battle has already been won. We are sealed by the promise. We are children of the Almighty King. We are royalty. Insults and cancellation, ridicule and derision, anger and hatred toward us cannot rob us of our royal identity. Yes, we live in a time of desperation, fear, and anxiety, and it is time for Christians to combat these negative emotions and the division they inherently produce. Perfect love casts out all fear. It is time to respond to the fear of others with love. Let your love be a light in the darkness defined at every corner by hate. We have a peace that transcends understanding. Don't fall into the trap of conflict and division. Don't plot revenge or act out of spite. Instead, have compassion on those who do not have the same peace and confidence, who cannot see the light, who have allowed anger to replace their joy. And the antidote to our own fear is faith. We don't have to hang on to our anxiety. We can give it over to the one who cares for us. He not only loves us, but he can do the caring for us. Those on the side of liberty and natural law are fighting a battle that we, as Christians, seem to be losing. Maybe our tactics are the culprit. Maybe our goals are. The greatest commandment is to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and strength. What would that look like? The peace and love and joy we have in Christ should remind us that we do not have to be right or convince anyone else that we are right. It is time for us to live right, because the second commandment is like the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. Loving your neighbor does not mean bullying, canceling, ridiculing, or shouting down, nor does it mean celebrating their own self-hate or celebrating their personal eternal destruction. In an era where we are told to be kind to ourselves, forgive ourselves, love ourselves, for Christians, that means being kind to those who disagree with us, forgiving those who wrong us, loving our enemies, and praying for those who persecute us and willfully abuse us. But the first commandment is first for a reason. We must love the Lord our God with all our heart. Our emotions should be directed by him and to him and honor the Creator, not his creation. And we must love the Lord our God with all our mind. To recognize, love, shamelessly proclaim, and be able to defend the truth. And we must love the Lord our God with all our strength. We cannot give up or give in until the war for love, truth, and freedom is won. What would it even look like to win the war? What if the battles we should be focused on are not found within the public school system, nor in political platforms or government offices? What if they aren't even in the media, nor in the establishment of laws, or in fighting the judicial battle? The real battles are taking place in hearts and minds. People's emotions are being manipulated, their spirits are being crushed, and their minds are being clouded and blinded. If we look at the news, at social media, at school curricula, at political candidates, and the entertainment industry, even our own company and institutions' HR departments, it makes it seem like truth is losing, that the fabric is irreparable, the obvious is permanently tarnished by the obscene. But what if we employed the pay it forward principle? What if we focused only on our small sphere of influence? What if it truly is just and entirely about authentic relationships? Can we repair the cloth one thread at a time? Can we clean up our little corner of the world without obsessing over losing the rest of society to the culture wars? Can we ease the suffering of one person and call that a success? Final note. Though I believe the country has come undone, there is still hope at the individual, local, and community levels, not through politics of division, but through empathy and compassion, love and joy and kindness, friendship and patience, and not giving into the destruction of history, destruction of the word, the destruction of culture, and the destruction of the family. We can also find the power to resist the destruction in our solidarity. Repairing the cloth, shoring up the foundation, though a monumental task, must take place one thread at a time. But if we are all willing to sew just a small part on our own while simultaneously believing and acting in unity, perhaps this country will have a chance after all. But it will not happen magically on its own. As President Reagan so adroitly pointed out, quote, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free." End quote. I believe we have arrived at the generation where there is a possibility that we will no longer fight for and protect freedom in the United States. Please, Americans, prove me wrong. Acknowledgements. First, I want to thank my faithful at Freedom Academy with Dorothy, as each and every one of them said I should turn my May 2022 The Unraveling webinar into a book. It took the greater part of a year, but I did it. Special thanks goes to Wally Ferris, because by working with him, I learned how to enter book writing mode. And thank you, Joe Sharp, for relentlessly telling me to get that book published already. Heartfelt thanks go out to my son Alex, who designed and drew the 2 Pillars graphics. My sincerest and deepest appreciation is reserved for my husband, supportive in all endeavors and in all ways. And the book is dedicated to my mother, who believed I would do great things, but left this world on February 28th, 2022, without those expectations realized. I miss you, Mom.